Israel's security cabinet is meeting to vote on a Gaza ceasefire and hostage release deal. According to the Prime Minister's office, Benjamin Netanyahu is convening the meeting, and prior to the meeting, Netanyahu took part in a security assessment to discuss implementation of the deal with the negotiating team, which returned overnight from Doha after signing the final version of the agreement. If approved, the agreement will halt fighting and bombardment in Gaza's deadliest ever war and initiate the release of dozens of hostages held in the territory since Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack on Israel. Under the deal struck by Qatar, the United States and Egypt, the coming weeks should also see the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails. The ceasefire is due to begin on Sunday after more than a year of war. It is scheduled to take effect on the eve of Donald Trump's inauguration as President of the United States. In Gaza itself, Israeli warplanes kept up intense strikes. And the Civil Emergency Service said on Friday that at least 101 people, including 58 women and children, had been killed since the deal was announced. As the cabinet is mulling over the deal, Palestinians in Khan Yunis were seen inspecting the damage in the aftermath of the Israeli strike. Nearby, people in Nasser hospital mourned and prayed over bodies of loved ones killed in Israeli strikes.
About the truce, we ask God for the truce to be implemented because the people are really tired of a life of death, a life of killing, and a life of destruction. Life has become an unbearable hell. Regarding children, aside of the psychological situation, the social situation, and the economic situation on multiple dimensions, we are honestly suffering physically, completely suffering.
And for on this, joining us live on the broadcast is Scott Lucas, who is a professor of international politics, Clinton Institute, University College Dublin. Thanks very much for being here. Let me begin by asking you, what should one make of the latest coming in on the deal from Israel at this point?
So I think the best way to explain this is that the approval of the deal in Israel was delayed by 24 hours. It should have taken place yesterday. And the reason for the delay was because two hard right ministers in Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet, that's the National Security Minister, Itzhak Ben-Gvir, and the Finance Minister, Bezalel Smotrich, threatened to leave the government and indeed to collapse the government if it proceeded with the ceasefire deal. Now, Netanyahu has reached an agreement with these two hard right figures not to collapse the government. However, looking forward, here's the important condition. Both of these ministers, Mr. Smotrich and Mr. Ben-Gvir, have said that Israel must return to war as soon as the first phase of the ceasefire deal is completed. That's in 6 weeks' time. So although we've avoided a crisis now, and the first phase of the deal will go ahead, including the hostage swap for Palestinian detainees in Israel's prisons, we are now probably further away from getting a second phase of the ceasefire deal that would end the threat of ongoing violence.
Right. Speaking of the pressure on Netanyahu domestically at this point, how precarious is the situation looking for him, according to you?
So Netanyahu is in a very tricky position, and that is he either has to stand up to these hard right ministers and say, no, we're going to go ahead and stop the war against Hamas. We're not going to try to absolutely destroy Hamas, which has been his stated goal. He has to stand up to them and have the risk that his government will collapse at some point, or he has to appease these hard right ministers and somehow disappoint not only opposition politicians who have criticized him, but also disappoint the families of the hostages. Because remember that in the first phase of this deal, only 33 of the 94 Israeli hostages are returned. There's still more than 60, dead or alive, who are still held by Hamas. So if Netanyahu does not proceed with the second phase, he'll face pressure from other parts of the Israeli public. He's got to walk this tightrope because remember, he not only faces a difficult political future. He faces a difficult legal future. If there is a ceasefire in which the hostages have not returned and in which Hamas has not been destroyed, attention may return to the bribery trial where Netanyahu faces the threat of a prison sentence if he is convicted.
And what do you make of the fact that the way things stand, at least the deal is scheduled to take effect on the eve of Donald Trump taking over as the American president?
Well, I think, success has 1,000 fathers, failures an orphan. So both Donald Trump and Joe Biden are trying to claim credit for getting this deal across the line. I'd say two things here. First of all, to just focus on that ignores those who have been involved in trying to broker the discussions. That includes the Qataris, that includes the Egyptians, that includes other international groups. But secondly, what happened with the United States is that as soon as Donald Trump was elected, Joe Biden and Donald Trump agreed that they would try to get this deal completed before Trump took office. Biden said to Trump, it will make you look good on inauguration day if this deal is done. And that's why you had Biden officials and Trump officials cooperating with each other. And that did help because let's be honest here, this deal could have been made last summer, but it did not get made for two reasons. One, Benjamin Netanyahu, again, was scared of facing the far-right opposition in his cabinet. And secondly, Joe Biden would not cut American military aid to Israel. And that's the real tragedy here. Whoever claims credit for the deal being made now, it could have been made several months ago, and we could have saved thousands of lives.
Scott Lucas, appreciate your joining us here and sharing those perspectives.
Thank you.